Welcome back for all of our listeners, and if you're new here, hello, I'm Kimberly, your host, and this is The Parent Solution, your one-stop shop for all things educational. So last week I shared some of my thoughts about how the school system has evolved over the years and how we as parents and educators can drive the future of education in a particular direction. So today I wanted to continue that conversation and chat about the direction that education appears to be headed in already, just as a result of the circumstances of the past 2 years or almost 2 years now, and how we as educators and parents can take advantage of that as best as we can and utilize the space in which we're finding ourselves. So starting by talking about the direction that education has gone in, it's much more online, obviously, just in terms of resources and classes than it has been in the past. For example, there's no such thing as a snow day anymore. That's not something that seems to exist. Kudos and shout out to the educators and the teachers that do give their kids snow days on the days when buses aren't running. But for the most part now, there's no such thing as a snow day. Teachers will just, okay, hop online. We're going to have online class today. So that's one thing that has practically changed anyways. Now, this shift towards online is not necessarily a bad thing. There's pros and cons to each side. So some immediate cons that become evident, the boundaries between home and school are obviously blurred, and this can be disastrous if it's not really done right. There's no focus, there's no concrete, real learning that happens. There's very little engagement and interest, which ultimately kills that drive for learning that we as parents and educators especially want to encourage in our kids and our students. Another immediate physical side effect is that you have students staring at a screen for hours on end. That's not anywhere close to being healthy or effective for children to be doing that, regardless of what age they're at. Some of the pros, though, you can, if you do online education right, have a very focused environment. Speaking from personal experience, I find that there's no real room for goofing off when it's done right. Creativity and imagination is usually much higher because you have to be creative in the way that you teach things and the way that students learn things and in the way that you really get them their resources. That leads to a bit of a different conversation about tech adaptation, which is another pro. Within limits, I do think that it's a good thing. Being able to prepare for the future and give our students and our children skills for the future and capability to know that they can handle whatever comes their way. The same way that adults have to balance a work-life sort of balance, kids have to balance a school-life balance, and the concept of online education has really kind of thrown that out of balance, with it being not necessarily a good balance between school and life. So my overall question today, because this is the parent solution, and I like to frame things in a contextual framework, and make sure that we have a solution that's presented. How can you, as a parent or even as an educator, know if you're getting the most, or if your students rather are getting the most out of online education? I have three top things that I put together based on my own personal experience, but as well based on, I'm sure, many educators' experiences as well, that are hints for knowing how your kids and your students are getting the most out of online education. So number one, first and foremost, is engagement. This honestly is the most telling sign of how much your child or your student is enjoying their schooling. Some good questions to ask yourself: are they excited about learning? Do they want to quote unquote do school most days? Every kid has their bad days, but for the most part, do they want to do school most days? When they finish with school, are they happy with how their day went? What is their attitude like? Are they relaxed? Are they uptight? Are they nervous? Are they on the verge of an emotional breakdown? Or are they happy and wanting to play and relax and chill out? So these are some key questions to ask, I think, in order to determine if your child really is into online learning. And if they're not into one format of online learning, it doesn't mean that they won't be into another format. The danger here, of course, is that you have so many formats and forms of online learning these days that you just don't know where to turn and which one to choose. Engagement is the number one sign, and you really want to be able to give your child a choice in their education. So number two, activities. Particularly when it comes to education, you obviously want to have a wide variety of activities that your child is participating in. educational, obviously, because we're talking about this in an educational context. But keep in mind that not all education seems to be academic from the surface. Oftentimes, children and students, as us educators know, children and students are more resistant to the typical sort of look that education takes on. And games and play-based learning are a really great way to get around that, particularly with online learning, because it doesn't seem like it's learning. It doesn't seem like it is anything concretely educational, but it is. So some questions to ask yourself with these sorts of activities, if you're a parent or whether you're a parent or an educator, does your child or your student get to play while they learn? Are there different things that are online and offline that they get to do for school? I don't think that the answer is to give every child a bunch of digital activities and then have that be just the be all and end all. They need to have things that are offline as well. And we'll get to that in a second. Another question you can ask yourself, that you should ask yourself, is there a range in the types of activities that they're participating in? I've done other podcasts and I've done many blog posts about the idea of different skills that children need and different types of learning that children have. Your kids and your students have to be participating in in a wide range of activities, whether it's visual, kinesthetic, verbal, auditory, whatever it might be. They've got to have a range. It can't all be one type of learning. Are they simultaneously learning soft skills? Are we training our children for the future, or are we training our children for something that is in the past? So number 3, this is my last one here, and it's quality over quantity. And I want to talk about this in a little bit more detail. With digital and alternative education that's becoming more popular, there's a big concern about screen time, especially for children. And the concern about that is at an all-time high, I think, and with good reason. The biggest concern for children if you want to call it the digital age, particularly over the last 2 years, has been the amount of screen time that they've experienced, whether it's in school or out of school. But online schooling has really taken over a lot of that screen time and increased it in a lot of cases. So with quality education, time is not really as important as content. Online schooling, when it's done right, should be structured much differently than your typical educational institution is. So sitting at a computer desk, which would equate to your desk at school, staring at a computer screen, which would equate to your notepad or your duotang or what have you at school, for 6+ hours a day is just not realistic. Maybe in an educational institution, the physical educational institution where everything's in person, but not online. It shouldn't even be considered in the online learning space. When you're looking for an educational alternative, if you're a parent, particularly if it is online, you want to look for the quality time that is spent. Now, this doesn't necessarily equate to, the less time, the better. Obviously not. But you do have to be aware of the educational online programs that have long days. Obviously, there are some variables here. That the age of the students, I think, is one of the largest factors. Children under 8 shouldn't really have anything more than an hour to an hour and a half a day of online education, if that. Students between ages 9 and 13, no more than 2 or 2.5 max, and that's a daily. That's a lot. Now, teenagers are usually capable of a little bit more than that, ranging anywhere from 3 to 6, really. But in my personal opinion, anything more than 3 hours of online schooling daily for a teenager is too much. There comes a point when the brain just checks out and you don't want to let your child hit that wall. One last thing that I have to say about this topic here is, the biggest thing, and this goes along with engagement, you want to be able to involve your child in their own learning. It really should go without saying that your child should have an opinion and they should have a voice in what they are learning. And I feel like that's I'm a bit of a broken record at this point, saying, you need to give your kids a choice. But it's true, you do, with everything, including education, including their own education. With online educational programs becoming much more commonplace and online schooling becoming much more commonplace, you have to be able, it's more important now than ever, you have to be able to give your child that freedom to make a choice. Empowering them to make their own decisions within a guided framework, of course, it is really key to their success. It's honestly no secret throughout history. Humans have done a lot better for themselves and for others, if you want to think about it that way, when they're given choices. The human race just naturally wants to succeed, and instinctively, as a human race and as a human being, we all want to do well. In children in particular, this is crucial. You have to allow a child to practice making decisions from a young age, because that enables them to continue practicing and honing those skills as young adults, and then as fully functioning adults. Allowing a child to make certain decisions within, again, specific guided parameters sets them up for different life situations and for critical life situations when they're older. And isn't that really what real education is all about? Don't we want to raise our children to be champions for themselves and for future generations? That's it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening, guys. I appreciate you all. Remember, new episodes will be premiering every Tuesday at 5 a.m. EST on Spreaker. Again, this is The Parent Solution, your one-stop shop for all things educational.